this week's episode of Gundam Build Fighters Try, the battle between the two-star students of the Jigen House School finally goes down. That's right, my friends. Sekai Kamiki versus Junya Inose. Before you guys check out our review, make sure to check out the 4th episode of the Powerful Nerdcast in the description box below. Fans of G Gundam should get excited because this week's episode of GBFT was a glorified love letter to fans of that show. In fact, pretty much all of GBF is kind of like a spiritual successor to that series, and I think that's why a lot of people have latched onto it. And frankly, I'd still love to see a second season of G Gundam. I really do think it's a series that begs for it, only for the creativity and just how much fun the show is overall. But that's what GBF is for. And this week's episode was great because we finally got to see the beginnings of Sekai and Junya's battle, which did not disappoint, although we all know that next week's episode is going to be a little more flashier. And I really liked that this week's episode actually went in a direction that I was not expecting, because my first thought was all of these goons are going to beat up Yuma, take his parts, repaint them black, and that's what Junya is actually going to use in his battle against Sekai. Actually, no! That whole opening scene is just an excuse to show the character off for the first time, reinforce the fact that he actually trained with Sekai before, and to get a few flashbacks of them training. And this is where the G Gundam references come in. So, they did their training originally at the Guiana Heights, which is exactly where Domon Kashu and Master Asia did their training in G Gundam, and subsequently had some amazingly epic battles, and that's exactly what happens in this week's episode, because the battlefield they fight on at the end just so happens to be the Guiana Heights. And I really do love that they tried to focus a little bit more on Sekai and the Denial Gundam. That's actually the name of Junya's Gundam, the Denial Gundam. It's basically just black and gray, evil red eyes, and it even has a special ability it shows off at the end of the episode. But before we get to that, I do appreciate the fact that both Yuma and Fumina got to do something really awesome with their Gundams. First, let's talk about Yuma, because again, I'm still not as impressed with his abilities because they just seem pretty standard as far as Gundam go, but it's still really impressive how he was able to shake off that guy by removing his backpack and then flying off to a greater distance and sniping him from afar. He's really a tactical gunpla battler. And that brings us to Fumina, who showed off another cool ability. The star-winning Gundam has so many awesome moves, and what I really love is they did something creative with it, because it starts to go through its transformation sequence and turn back into its real mode, and the fighter that she's actually going up against decides, oh, I'm going to attack you during the transformation sequence. I rarely hear that in any sort of anime or when a giant robot is transforming into something. Attack it while it's transforming. However, Star Winning actually uses this to its advantage, and it only goes through half of its transformation. It keeps the small head, it puts on the big legs, ends up kicking the other mobile suit in the face, and then its feet actually remove, and then its legs turn into big cannons! That was freaking awesome. But let's talk about the battle between Tri-Burning Gundam and the Denial Gundam. A Gundam which actually has a name, which is very fitting for the character of Junya, who frankly is living in denial. His only goal in the entire series, it seems, is to obtain every single martial art he can so that he can be a professional badass. That's really all that's been revealed about the character. He only went to the Jigen House School simply so he could learn its techniques. He didn't really seem to have any sort of strong connection with the other students or even his master. Although, according to Akira Suga, that's something that he's actually lost over time, and I'm sure it's going to be a big lesson he learns when eventually Sekai ends up beating the living crap out of him. But it's just really great to see them fight each other, because the battle starts up with basically them just copying each other's techniques, and that's because Junya knows everything that Sekai is going to do. So you really get to see all of Tri-Burning's attacks in this week's episode. But really, Junya ends up taking over the battle when he starts using different martial arts that Sekai has never even seen before, and it leads to a lot of great scenes. I especially love the one when the Denial Gundam is using some boxer moves and just wailing all over him. It's really impressive. The battle ends with both characters bringing out their big guns, getting ready to use their trump card abilities. Tri-Burning has all of its fire erupting from its body, and then suddenly the Denial Gundam reveals its other ability, which is this weird, almost like plasma beam hair coming out of the back of its head, which if you look at the preview of the show, it's going to use as a weapon, and frankly, it just makes it look badass. I especially love the color of it. It just really makes it pop, and I really hope that's actually an attachment to the Denial Gundam Gunpla, because that's just going to look glorious on the shelf. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Gundam Build Fighters Try, another good episode that was a little slow in the first half, I have to admit. There's a lot of things they could have cut down, and really that's the only negative I really have to say about this week's episode. Otherwise, just getting to learn a little bit more about the Jigen House School is amazing. I especially love the reference to G Gundam in the Guyana Heights. The minute I saw Sekai and Junya training there when they were younger, the first thing that popped up into my head was, oh my god, that's exactly where Domon was! They're even camping out and eating fish! It's absolutely ridiculous, and if, like I said, if you're a fan of G Gundam, you're just gonna eat that stuff right up. But I still love the theory that you guys came up with that actually this Domon Kashu character could in fact be Reiji. He could just be, you know, Reiji styled out just like Domon Kashu. It could either be an extreme coincidence, or after Reiji became a huge fan of Gunpla, he ended up watching a lot of Gundam anime and got really attached to Domon Kashu, which, when you think about their personalities, that makes sense. And I just think that would be funny. So this isn't going to be the case like Rambaral. This is going to be something a little more unique, if it goes in that direction. And I honestly thought that this episode was going to be the one where they would introduce the Master, but really this was just the beginning of their battle. Nothing has even really started yet. This is all just a build-up. But what is also important about this episode is we also get our big Final Four in the final part of the competition. I think we can all assume that the Tri-Burning Gundam and their team and Team Tri-Fighters are going to go to the finals. That's just the way it is in this series. And it just makes you realize that the series is coming to a close, which I really don't want to happen at all. There are some whispers in the rumor mill that possibly Gundam Build Fighters Try could be extended maybe into another season, or maybe even go longer. I would actually like that to happen, but only because this show is just a lot of fun to watch. Like I said before, the animation and the artwork can look a little wonky at times, and the first half of this week's episode was a little slow. Despite that, I thought this was an amazing build-up episode for the battle between the Denial Gundam and the Tri-Burning Gundam. Just getting to learn a little bit more about the Jigen House School, I think, is really interesting. So, I loved this episode. I'm pumped up for the next one, even more than I was for this one, and I think that's a pretty big accomplishment. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. Not a perfect episode. It was a little slow and sloppy in the first half, but I'm glad it went into an interesting direction, and the battle is just beginning. Get excited, guys! We are almost at the end of the Gunpla National World Tournament. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and like the video. And before you leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Gundam Build Fighters Try. What did you think of the Denial Gundam and its design? What do you want to see from the battle with the Tri-Burning Gundam? And what's the deal with Sekai's Master, really? Please tell me in the comment section below. If you guys have not subscribed to our channel, I'd recommend doing that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. You can also follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter. And make sure to check out the 4th episode of our brand new video podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. It'll be at the very end of this video. Thank you guys for watching. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.